Right, I think we're live. Welcome everybody to the Kinross-shire Committee on the 16th November. On my right is Richard Waters, he's the Vice Convener, and online are Kirsten Malloy, Lee Haxton, Elliot Williamson and Magda as support online. If you want to draw my attention, if you put a Q in the chat or raise your hand in here and I'll pick you up and take from there. Do we have any apologies, Kirsten?
Thanks, Convener. No, we don't have any official apologies. We're hoping to be joined by Sarah Bruce-Jones from Fossaway Community Council and also Councillor Freshwater.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any declarations of interest in any of these cases? No, I don't see any.
Probably should say that if we're chatting about the TACTRAN board, I am a board member of TACTRAN, but I don't think it affects me contributing, but just like openness that people know. Okay.
I'd probably say that Douglas sends his apologies and I'm deputising for him as well.
So you're a substitute?
I'm substitute for Douglas.
And I guess Chris is a substitute.
That's all.
Okay, that's good. Moving on. The minutes of the last meeting that were distributed, is everybody happy with them? Any comments? No? Okay. We can note those as being approved, I think. Moving on to the outstanding business statement. There's quite a list accumulating. So the first one was the Brunthill Wind Farm, which was completed. The former Blurringdon Primary School is on the agenda, so we'll cover that today. The interim evaluation report of the Kinross-shire Local Committee was completed at the last meeting. The winter maintenance was completed at that was completed at the last meeting, I believe. There's a number of items outstanding that hopefully we'll get some movement on, which is the membership training. That is on the use of Teams to ensure that people can get in if we have to do a Teams meeting. There's to be a planning enforcement session, which is to be for all the members, including all community council members. So that was the thing you raised earlier on. There is to be a Kinross-shire Local Committee independent evaluation findings presentation, which is based on the powers and decision-making process. That's to be done by, I think, Lisa Simpson. So we will need to get that organised. And we did make a commitment to doing a community transport forum meeting at some point. But I think we need to wait for Drew to do his presentation and then we can see where we're going with the services locally at the moment. Are we all happy with that? Can we remove the completed items from the outstanding business case? Yes, please. Yes. Okay. Okay. Moving on to the paper 5. Evening, Mark. Evening, Sarah.
Apologies.
That's right. So we're going to have a presentation from Mark Butterworth. He's just walked in the door. Basically, this is paper 5, and it relates to the funding that is available to the community. At the budget meeting in March this year, the council allocated £40,000 to Kinross-shire Fund. So if Mark wants to present on it. I haven't said it all. Are you ready to present, or you want?
I thought Lee was presenting the report.
No, it says. Well, Lee, would you like to present? It's on my procedural notice. It says Mark. Lee, would you like to?
Happy to do so. I think you've more or less covered it, though, Convener. To be totally honest, I mean the paper confirms the discretionary budget that's been made available to the committee over the last couple of financial years, and points out that there is an existing budget of £50,000 available, and I think the criteria are very broad. It's just to be used at the discretion of this committee.
Does anyone have any questions on that? No? Yeah.
I think it's important that people realise this isn't the community investment fund.
Yeah.
This is actually this fund, this budget is empty for this committee.
Indeed, and it can be spent on anything that we deem appropriate and is appropriate for the council. Yes, sir.
And I have a question after last night's Fossaway Community Development Trust meeting. Would the fund be appropriate for them to apply to for funding their feasibility study and their business plan that they want to put together, need to put together for the CAT?
It would be up to this committee to decide whether that was appropriate or not.
So it's up to them basically to put the application.
Yeah, do you know how much that's going to be, roughly?
Not until we have point. That's actually for later down the agenda. So I want to look, it's all will depend on the valuation, but they're probably looking about £15,000.
Okay. Because there may be other pots. I don't know if Lee can tell us, are there other pots available for that sort of thing?
The short answer is yes, there would be other funding opportunities. Of course, that they would all come attached with conditions, different levels of intervention and different timescales.
Okay.
Yeah, it essentially suggests that the Community Development Trust will be looking for funding to be able to fund the feasibility studies and the business plan that's being required of them to do once the valuations are being presented. And it's for basically Blair and Gone School.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because there is another proposal to use the money elsewhere. We'll come to that later on. Okay, so we're all happy with that. Should we move on? Yes, okay. If we can move on to the TACTRAN Active Travel Plan. Elliot, would you like to introduce this?
Yep, thanks, Councillor Cuthbert. I'll just be relatively brief with regards to this piece of work. So essentially, you'll see that we've got a paper taken to for committee today, essentially looking for funding towards doing some active travel work, essentially, or potentially a proposal to use this fund towards active travel across the Kinross area. So as a bit of background, currently TACTRAN, who are our regional transport partner, so that's for Perth, Kinross, Angus, Dundee and Stirling, they've produced a piece of work called a Regional Active Travel Network. This essentially looks at the future kind of walking and cycling networks across the whole region. And they're currently looking at over 360 kilometres of high quality active travel infrastructure. And this is with in mind that there's a lot of central government funding coming forward over the next couple of years that will be invested heavily into active travel. Unfortunately, one of the things that's came out of this work so far is they haven't included any routes or active travel infrastructure within the Kinross-shire area. And equally, this is the same with Sestrand's regional active travel work. So that's the same type of work that was done across the southeast of Scotland, which actually comes across at the Kinross border. And there hasn't seemed to be acknowledgement of that crossover between Fife and coming into Kinross. So essentially, the paper today is about is proposing to use £40,000 of the Kinross-shire Committee budget towards developing active travel projects across the Kinross-shire area, and then the details of that will come out over time, and we look to instruct officers, including myself, to come up with a proposal on what actually we want to see and use this money directly for.
Yeah, thank you, Elliot. Do you want to add to that as a member of TACTRAN?
No, but just to say that this is the TACTRAN report, and you probably won't see it, but we've got a line across the border between Fortivia and Abernethy, and there's nothing below it. You know, and that really summarises the document pretty well. There's really nothing in it for Kinross, and it's these are about strategic path routes, not like the more recreational stuff that Track's doing an amazing job on, and given the amount of money going forward, with 10% Scottish Transport budget going forward, if you haven't got the work done to prepare these routes, you're not getting any of the money off that. So the idea with this 40,000 is that it will generate huge amounts more. Office strands or whatever. I know there's a bit of the Verity House agreement with the Scottish Government and councils is kind of got a wee bit to play out before we know exactly what will happen with Sustrans funding. going forward. But I don't think that changes the idea that we need work done locally to make sure we get the share of the strategic active travel routes over the whole area. You know, so I don't think that.
Just checking, it's not just me that's lost a live feed.
I think they've frozen. Or have they got? Yeah, maybe we'll just take a quick 5-minute recess till they come back.
Yeah, but
Oh, hello. Dave, can you hear us?
So we can't see or hear them, but I've just messaged Mark and he's aware that the live feed's dropped. I'm not sure if that means that they can still hear or see us.
Yeah, we might try and remove them from the meeting so they can rejoin.
Strategic documents, because if you get your projects into the strategic document, currently it opens up the chances of getting funding, you know, millions of pounds worth of funding to build the projects. In fairness, the document is not what I call dynamic document, i.e. if we get projects at a certain level, they will automatically feed into the document, you know, into the strategy. So it's not like we won't get stuff in there. What we need to do is to get projects up to that level and then feed them up to TACTRAN, and then we go in there and that increases the chance of getting funding.
Yeah, Dave, you're back and you're live.
thank you.
You can,
Yes, Willie.
that I couldn't believe, like Richard, that TACTRAN had completely missed Kinross-shire out from their running through Kinross is the Great North Road. The Great North Road, the original main stagecoach route. So I really don't understand it. The question I was going to ask was, if we commit the money to do this, have the council got the capacity to spend the money? I mean, there isn't. The council haven't got the capacity to to spend it. So I'm asking you.
Yeah, I think I think the first thing would say just generally, I think the committee hasn't got a lot of money, so anything that you can do which generates additional money or additional resource, I think that's always a good thing. In terms of what the council got the capacity, it hasn't got the capacity at the moment to take this on, which I think is actually a good thing, because I don't think it would be right to subsume it into somebody's role, because you'd probably get lost with other priorities and you wouldn't get your money's worth, if you like. So what we've been talking about is going away and working up an implementation plan, if you like, as it may not be the best solution to try to employ a member of staff for a year. There may be different ways of doing it. So I think what we're saying is we'll go away and work that up, if you like. But I don't think if we did have the capacity, that would be the best thing, because before long that person would be getting moved off to other projects, etc. And accounting for the time and the money you're spending probably might be difficult. So we would try to, if it was through the council, get a specific resource or a specific individual who would work solely on Kinross-shire projects. If we could get more money from somewhere else, well, maybe that, you know, we could get another member of staff, or maybe again, if we can get additional money, it can spread over a longer period of time. But we'd want it to be, I'm sure yourselves will be, a discrete resource just to work directly with yourselves.
Because I remember in the past, the council used to always have like shovel-ready project, try and have one or two shovel-ready projects,
Yeah.
so that when money was released by the government, Scottish government, you could actually use it. Because often it was at the last minute you'd be offered.
Yeah, I think there's less and less capacity now, so there's less and less about.
Yeah.
But that would be great, because there is often money released this time of year where the Scottish governments are saying, UK government, can you spend this money? And if you've got the projects and the capacity,
Right.
you can.
Mhm.
Nobody really has, and that's why they're giving the money back in a lot of cases and carrying it forward. But I think also that it's important to make the point that the money that we're talking about won't be spent in this year. It would have to be, you know, we'll come back to your next meeting with the proposal, and that would likely to be into next year. So we just have to carry the resources forward. But as I said, I think a discrete resource, which you guys know exactly what you're getting for your money, would be important.
Right, that's helpful. Thanks.
Okay, Dave, Gordon.
Well, it's we're just exploring a bit about how we come to be missed off. If you read the report, you'll see that there were a lot of meetings over a lot of months, involving a lot of stakeholders. Not evident that anybody paid any attention whatsoever in Kinross-shire. It was the only body that was involved with the Perth and Kinross Trust. And then get to the stage where they produced the map, which we just seen. It's a primary school kid, 30 seconds to work out that someone's forgotten about Kinross-shire. I mean, it isn't simple against the needing to sort of complete the map. I mean, there's a lot of data in this report and costings of potential strategic routes, which presumably somebody was paid to do that. There's, as I can see, in terms of happening, there's absolutely no capacity to do that work. So, in a sense, one's got to go back to Arrow and say, you know, the more money back into this, because you've done a bad job. Because even if I was working for Arrow, I would have said there's something wrong here. So I don't want to see the 40,000 or whatever we might allocate to this to be spent on doing a repair job on behalf of Arrow.
Yeah.
Or Strands, or Scottish government. I mean, this document went in front of lots of officials in lots of organisations. It's only when we got our hands on it that we realised there was something fundamentally wrong. So I think that's the first thing is, well, I mean, Richard mentioned it was a dynamic document. Well, fair enough. And when we had the meeting with the chief executive, he was very keen to emphasise that. But there's got to be a process whereby the map is corrected. The projects which we are interested in are written in on along the lines, because otherwise we'll get 6 months down the line and everybody will forget about Kinross-shire again. So I do want to make a complete separation between repairing the omission and whatever work has got to be done and whoever's going to pay for that, compared to the money we've got within this committee, which, I mean, and I do agree, I think, with what Mark's saying, that I think it's an opportunity in a way. If we could get some person, whoever that person is, to really drive this thing forward. And it is a strategic thing going over 5 years, maybe more, you know. So we want to get the plans properly formulated But I think that person should be responsible to this committee. It seems to me to be a really good opportunity to show how this committee can work with the staff in the officers in PKC plus board councils, plus us community councils, and we discussed it at Bournemouth Community Council very briefly. And you know, we discussed what we dealt with all the three strategic routes within Kinross-shire, and you know, I would mention that to just the tack trans, and we can talk about those in a few minutes, you know, but it's something like that, you know, a person, we all know who it is, it's got a total responsibility, 5 days a week or 3 days a week or whatever, but that's the only responsibility you've got, will be to drive the way forward with these particular strategic routes.
Okay, good. Do you want to respond or?
Yeah, I think you know, everyone is, it's just sort of the $1 million question, isn't it? Why was Kinross-shire omitted? And I don't know the answer. I don't know if Elliot knows the answer to that, or whether we would maybe need to get back, you know, formally. We could write on behalf of the committee formally and ask that question. But Elliot, are you aware of why there was Kinross-shire was not part of the report? Was it out of scope, or is there another report somewhere which covers Kinross-shire?
No, it certainly wasn't out of scope, but I've not got a direct answer. To be honest with you, Mark, I kind of think that it's definitely a part of our kind of next step in looking at a proposal to come back to the committee. I think part of that is also asking the question to TACTRAN and see if there's actually something within their means and their work that's ongoing, if we can feed into. So I think that's another strand of what we kind of want to push forward, but there's no direct answer, but it was certainly within the scope of TACTRAN's area.
So I guess maybe when we come back with a paper, maybe that's following discussions with TACTRAN about how we can maybe put a package together, as opposed to just if there's any resources that they could add into this or work with us on, so we can try to produce a bit more.
I think we've lost connection again.
I think we've lost them again. But...
Oh, I think you're back.
Oh.
I think sorry, okay,
carry on, yep.
I think in the meetings that I've had with TACTRAN, and including at the board meeting where this paper came, where the strategy came forward, it is very much from their perspective was there was nothing feeding up into them, was all that was given. And my questions with them, I wonder if the committee would be, you know, and if we are writing to TACTRAN for more information, just to query whether they've got some money to put towards this 40,000 for a project for an active travel officer, that can potentially come in and take this forward. But I think that's what the, you know, TACTRAN were kind of, you know, my conclusion at the end of all the meetings was that there's just nothing. There's nothing at the level that needs to happen with on the ground here, the strategic level on the ground here happening. So there's nothing to feed up into it. But TACTRAN do have a budget themselves to cover stuff like this. So I don't know if we do if we're going to write to them as a committee, whether we could ask.
Exactly, it's almost if we can use it as match funding to lever in more money. As I said, the committee hasn't got a lot of money, so any money it can use to lever in more money is definitely the right principle, I think.
Okay, Dave, want to come back in?
Yeah. One of the things that I was mentioning to in the TACTRAN's meeting with, of course, we have this Hargreaves study that was done to Westfield, and of the various paths and tracks feeding into Westfield now. I have the impression that Hargreaves are prepared to find some more money to keep this momentum rolling. They don't want to be to the big people. They completely funded it. That's the I'm talking about. With Rockwell Energy. So they're a potential source of money. We've got to put some money on the table first, I'm sure. What's the other thing is this thing going on SEPA, Scottish Enterprise Sustainable Development Project, or the River Leven catchment. And that's a 10-year project which started in 2020. And so far, they've done nothing in our area, I don't think. They'll be concentrating lower down at metal and things like that. But again, I think possibly there might be a bit of money there to help drive this thing forward.
So can you make contact with them as well? I mean, you can
Yeah, I think,
contact from Dave.
yeah, I think we'll go away and look at all the different opportunities and try to sort of bring them all together and join up the dots and see what we can do with that. Yeah.
I think I'm getting the sense that we're all in favour of putting something together. Are we happy that the officers go away and do some work and come back to the next meeting with a proposal?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Rick answered why what some answers why we were missing. I think that's fundamental, that we need to know why.
Yeah.
If it was in scope, why is it not in the document?
Absolutely. Drew, if you want to
I think it would be useful to have some sort of a strategic plan for routes within Kinross-shire, and to do it ourselves and not rely on other people doing it for us, because if we do that, it'll not happen. At the moment, we're undertaking an active and sustainable
I think you've lost connection again.
I wonder if somebody needs to just check the cables to make sure it's not as simple as a loose connection.
Yeah, maybe. Usually it's okay. No, Dave, we can't hear you.
Okay, so
I don't know.
I think the microphone might be off in the room. We're still struggling to hear you. Magda, maybe we should go into another recess.
continue.
Somebody to take notes or somebody to
something.
And we can hear you, but I don't think the camera's pointed the right way.
It's enough. Yeah.
I,
Better.
I've pressed every button there is, so.
You're back now.
Shall we continue? So what was I saying? I was saying that I think everyone seems to be in favour that we ask officers to go away. So we'd be happy to take that as a motion and approve it, yes. Is that unanimous? Yeah.
Can I just ask a simple question that looking at the front page implies that we are included in Sestran, Kinross-shire, and not in Tactran. Was the brief to Arup wrong? Is that line in the wrong place? Did they misunderstand the brief, or were we deliberately left out?
Are you going to answer that? Okay.
In the sense that I'm looking at the Sestran's equivalent document.
We have followed through a hole.
But somewhere along the line, the brief was wrong.
That's right.
Somewhere along the line, the brief was
I
wrong.
think the thing that's a point I've made is that quite a bit frustrating, this situation. I think energies need to be spent more in terms of what we want to see happen next, rather than what's happened previously. I think people realise that there's something gone wrong, and they wouldn't spend too much time on a big probe of it or anything.
I think that's what we're saying. So if I could take them away and look at it and ask Tactran why we were excluded and ask Sustrans why we were excluded, and then look at this creation of this role in consultation with Tactran, in consultation with Westfield and so on, and see if we can build a package that actually delivers. There's an awful lot of projects that we can be looking at. So
And just have a little bit of stuff about thinking, but I remember this is about strategic walking, cycling routes, the big routes, if you like. So the three ones which we talked about and seemed to be agreement on, and to then pull them to the off-road walking, cycling routes, separated from the carriageway quite clearly, and from my perspective, preferably over the edge, and like I was saying, 5 metre separation at least from carriageway to the path. But the three routes we talked about as a priority, connecting in Ross up to Gurney Bridge and along to Ballingery, with a side shoot into Westfield and a side shoot up to Kelty to connect with the which is coming from Kelty. So that would enable you to go walk and cycle, not up to Gurney Bridge, but also off road on the B9270. The road that goes past Bain Farm. Sidewalk Road, which is a complete nightmare to cycle along. That'd be one priority. The other one will be to connect Milner Ford through to Leslie. Again, with off-road route, which part of it exists already between West of Algety and Church or Kenneswood. But that will be a long route and quite difficult when you get to the Five side. But again, a very dangerous bit of road as you go from Scotland Well, or at least from Mockmere Bridge up to Kelty, up to Leslie. And then the third option would be to connect Glenfarg to Bridge of Erne. Bridge of Erne is on the map. That's bottom end of the map that exists. Anything would involve going through the big tunnel in Glenfarg. So I'm just interested in reaction from other community councils, if there's other ideas, or if anybody doesn't like that. But if the someone was sitting here now starting this, that's what I would suggest has been the starting point.
I think that logically you're looking for a north-south through the whole of Kinross-shire, and even community through Kinross-shire. You're more or less following the roads because that's your natural path.
The A91, the A977 and the B9097, we need an east-west. It's the same way we were talking last night about the buses. Great north and south, but there's nothing east to west.
So that's, we're not disagreeing.
From Glenfar's point of view, that is exactly what we are angling at, is we need the tunnels connected up to the Perth side, but we also need connected down to the pass that you're talking about, so down through Cuthell and Burnside and over into the Lomond Hills, which is a natural walking route, and it needs to be off-road, and then connecting somehow into the route that takes you through Devon and onto the sort of Tillicootree like there, and then there are opportunities there on old railway lines and whatever. So, and to have that on a map saying this is our direction of travel within 10 or 15 years, this is what we'll have done, and we'll nibble it off piece by piece.
Absolutely. Are you getting all this, Elliot? Are you still hearing us?
Yeah, no, it's been clear the last few minutes, which has been great. That's really useful, and I think that's exactly the approach that we take. The more specific and strategic we can be, and the more focused we can therefore be, kind of strengthens our case. Mindful, this is of course a regional network, so it is very strategic. It's looking at the key routes with the most demand. So I think that kind of north, south, and east west approach is a real good starter. So yeah, that's great.
The only proviso I would say is that you probably need 2 east-west routes, so that you go through Cleach as well as through Crooked Devon. So you've got like a north-south, which is logical. That was a Great North Road. It's a natural path. So I would look at 2 routes going east-west.
The B9097 is definitely 2 west.
Yeah.
It's a great job getting straight in. You have to have like a shopping list. What to do. I think it's very useful to try and pick routes where we know that we could also fill in with side branches. But that's just said, but if people have got in their heads the idea, well, I want to be able to go from Milton to Thorpe, right over to Leslie, non-motorised, off-road, and then that's great, and of course there can be side branches from that.
I think the logical conclusion is to get to some stage where you actually brand it in the way that they do the North Coast 500 and the Fife Coastal Path. If there's something that this is the Heart of Scotland network, some jazzy name for it or whatever, people would love to come and walk these roads or cycle them or whatever.
Okay, are you happy with that? Can we move on, because I'm conscious of the time? Yeah, the officers will want to go home. Are we all happy we move on? Yeah. So Elliot, if you want to head off, feel free. Thank you for coming. The next item is the grassland management approach, and the Vice Convener is going to take it.
Yes. Thank you, Convener. Paul Garden. You did. Leslie Ann. Hiya, Leslie Ann. Sorry, you're obviously doing this one.
Paul's been trying to get in, but he's been coming in and out a wee bit, I think.
We've been struggling tonight with the connection.
We use that,
Leslie Ann's been doing a lot of the work with the regional grassland management approach. So over to you, Leslie Ann, if you're ready to go, or you want to try and see if you can get Paul back in.
No, I mean, he was just coming along. I was going to do the presentation anyway. He's just here because he manages the teams that actually do the work. I'm just kind of doing the theory behind it all. So I'm quite happy to go ahead. And if there's anything I can't answer, I'll just need to come back on you if it's specifically operational. So I'll just share my presentation. Oh, it's saying it's not letting me present during the meeting.
Hi Leslie, I'm so sorry to be a pain. Would you mind emailing me a copy and we can share it?
Sorry, is that Kirsten? Yeah.
Yes. So even just you can send it to committee@PKC. Sorry for that. We should be able to share it at our end. Thank you.
Was that working today? Should we just give a bit of an overview while we're
you carry on? That's good.
I think so. Just in terms of a bit of background, so I think we've got Leslie. You keep me right. So a couple of years back, so during COVID, we looked at the way we managed our grassland, our sort of green open spaces, in terms of facilitating people who wanted to get out and about in the fresh air, etc. And also looking at the sort of biodiversity opportunities with managing our grassland in a different way. We did a pilot of about 50 or 60 sites. It didn't get universal support because these things never get universal support, but they got a lot of support, and there was lots of benefits. And I don't know if Les is going to go into, but lots of biodiversity benefits. There was lots of evidence about it was the right thing to do. So we took a report to committee, which Councillor Waters chairs, the Climate Change Committee, about rolling this approach out right across Kinross, Perth, Kinross. It was agreed for all the benefits, and also there's side benefits as well, because it requires less maintenance and less resources, and there's an opportunity for the council to save money as well. But that's a sort of a byproduct, not necessarily the driving force behind it. One of the things that we learned from the trial was engaging with the community early and bringing the community with us, because everyone supports the theory of biodiversity and looking at things differently. But when it comes to maybe the park that their house overlooks, or the green space that they back onto, which has now got a lovely manicured and well kept area, and suddenly it's not like that, they generally don't seem to support it as much. So we had an area, and I won't mention the area, which was not very happy with our approach, and they even said to me, well, can you do more somewhere else and carry on cutting our grass effectively? It was what they were saying, and we were saying, no, it doesn't work like that. But part of the issue was they felt that we didn't include them in the working up of the proposals and talk to them about how we were going to take it forward. So we are looking to roll this out next April, and we thought it would be really helpful if the committee could give us a steer early on how we can engage with the communities, because one of the things that we can't do, because there are about 2,000 pieces of green space right across Perth and Kinross, Leslie's team can't speak to every single community group and every single stakeholder prior to rolling this out. So we really need the support of the committee and the community councils in acting as our advocate and our sort of conduit really with community groups to say, you know, and the community, this is what we're doing. And sort of linking up with them, because we simply can't, we just haven't got the resource to do it. So that's sort of the background. So we thought today, bring something here, explain what we're doing and get your input. I think, can we go over to you yet, Leslie?
Yeah, I think I can do it. I don't think I can control the slide. So if you don't mind, if I just say next slide, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, we'll do that at our end.
Okay, thank you. So Mark has kind of covered the background with us. You know, it's not a definitive answer, but we've been away exploring, you know, how we can do this, enhancing biodiversity, you know, enhancing climate change, but also putting in savings. So for that, what we've done is some detailed examples specific to the Kinross area, different types of sites as well.
Sorry, Leslie, I still can't see it. Are we supposed to be seeing a presentation on screen?
I can see it.
Yeah, it's sharing. It should, as far as I'm aware, just automatically go to the big screen.
It's not doing it on the big screen, it's doing it on the laptop though. Can everyone see a laptop? Oh dear.
Hopefully I'll get on my laptop, so that'll be.
I think we're seeing Leslie Ann, Cassidy and Liam, huge size, you're about 10 foot tall.
Oh no. Oh dear.
Dave, do you want to try touching the panel and clicking the three buttons and maybe click content, and that you might be able to, hopefully that will work.
You can see one.
Is there a panel at the front there?
Good content.
Turn off road dive captions.
Start over there.
Yeah, you've got your bullet.
I've got it on iPad.
Yeah, I think we're
Have you managed to get it?
No, but we can actually, if everyone comes round screens,
Yeah, we've got on.
We're on screen.
talking, because otherwise we're going to run out of time, I think.
Okay, yeah, apologies. I don't know why that's not working, but yeah, if you're happy to continue.
Yeah, just do it.
Okay, so we did a management trial for the grassland. We started in the end of 2021. So some of them are, biodiversity areas that are cut and left. So that's the traditional method. But what we wanted to do was find out if there was other cost-effective methods that we could do that didn't, involve us taking horizons away. So we tried out NOMO on 34 sites as well. So biodiversity monitoring was undertaken by biodiversity ambassadors as well as some of the climate change team, and there was some really positive results. There was some really good benefits, and what I've done here is this is the photographs that were taken of Kirkgate Park of the areas that were added in during those trials. We did online consultation, and in the most part it was positive. There was 78%, and as Mark mentioned, there were some areas that people didn't take very well to it, but in the majority it was pretty positive. Okay, next slide. So we're looking at doing a joint thing. So we're trying to address climate change, biodiversity, but also to save money. So the NOMO areas, will be significantly increased in order for us to do this. In year one, there's a reduction of 9 staff in the grounds maintenance team that Paul manages. So what I've been doing is I've been crunching some numbers just to see what it is that we need to do, and we've had someone go out on site and just draw up what they think we could realistically stop cutting, whether there's still amenity space, what the space is used for, and this is a sort of general rule of thumb because we can't map all the sites. Just it will stop 90% of cutting grass with small individual lawnmowers, so that's the sort of stuff that you would use at home anyway. So that would be around, signs, bins, all these kind of things. We would then stop cutting with small ride-on mowers by 50%. So these are the ones that are generally going through housing schemes, cutting sort of bigger patches or anything that they can actually get on that there aren't, trees or bins, etc. in the way. And we'd look at a 10% reduction in tractor cutting. This is obviously the most efficient way of cutting grass, and that's what we do for, big flat areas, football pitches, that sort of thing. So to actually reduce more of that wouldn't make a huge saving, but also it would reduce the amenity use for the area for picnics and football, all these kind of things. So that's the sort of principle that we've gone with. And this would apply to all our sites for parks, play areas and housing estates. So that's about 1,600 different locations. So we have mapped up about 48 at the moment. So we've got examples for each ward. But it's taken quite a significant amount of work to do that. So we're hoping, that we can get a wee bit of help. Other things that we're going to do is to reduce winter operations, because this is full-time staff, not just seasonal staff. So there would be a reduction in leaf clearance and shrub pruning, and we've still got about 4,500 hours to find for the year one savings by taking that method forward. So in year two, we're looking to then save a further 8 staff. So in order to do that, we would need to stop all tractor cutting except sports pitches. We would reduce winter operations such as leaf clearance, shrub pruning, which we've already done in local sites about 10 years ago. So we do know what that would look like. And it would only be if it's blocking access that we would then get that cut back. We would be looking potentially at cease and pitch marking, that would include school sites as well. But to be fair, there's a chemical that was being used previously that's been taken off the market. So gradually we've been changing over pitch marking to what's called marking carrots that get put in the ground, and then people can just follow the line to use the line marker rather than burning them out with chemicals. We're also looking at not cutting areas and burial grounds that don't have active burials. So that would be the kind of older sections, or the likes of the one next to Kirkgate Park. Sorry, I've forgotten the name, but that wouldn't be getting cut. That's just an example. These are just proposals, and these are the sort of things that I'm going to have to look into. And obviously, I'm looking for advice and guidance on, what would be palatable to the communities. So I'm just going on to the specific examples in the next slide. So this is Kirkgate Park. So we've already done quite a lot here. So on the areas, it's showing existing long grass areas in the yellow. So that's the things that were shown in the picture earlier on. So there's already a significant area that's converted to long grass. And there's an area that's maintained by Scottish National Heritage as well. We're looking at retaining amenity cut areas there where we can, and allowing for recreation, picnics, allowing for the play areas and reducing around the margins. However, going forward, we may not be able to do that if we're having to reduce the tractor cutting. So I'm just going to go on to the next slide. So the year one, we would reduce by 10%. So that's the principles that we were working on. We wouldn't be spraying edges, which environmentally isn't such a bad thing. It would just be the hard surfaces that would be sprayed. And year two, we would just cut a margin around the play area, path edges, and would reduce a further 50% of the grass cutting. But that would result in less space for play and picnics. Okay, so on to the next example. It's Kinross Old Causeway. So this is a housing area not far from Kirkgate Park, council housing, and it's got small strips of grass. So we would just propose to stop cutting that entirely. It would become no mow. Year two, we wouldn't change that because we've already stopped what we're doing there anyway. This is just some examples there, and it's very typical of a lot of housing sites, just small areas. They're not really for public benefit as in picnics or play areas, but it'll be very important to the householders that live there or the people that are passing by. Okay, so just on to the next example is Springfield Estate. So this is another housing area. This is in private ownership, and it's got a sort of bigger amenity open space and local park. So looking at this, we're currently doing it by a ride-on mower. We would reduce that, and we wouldn't spray the edge, just as shown. So there would be a wee area around the edge, including the fence lines that we would cut around, and desire lines could be put in. We would leave that up to the local squad, or if we get community involved, they know where people tend to walk their dogs, or once the grass gets a wee bit long, the desire lines crop up. Because again, just mapping it all would take so much time. Year two, we would stop cutting the fence lines and desire lines to enable those savings. So that's just some photos on the next one, just to show you what the estate looks like. So it is, a nice big open space, probably used by dog walkers and locals, next to car parking areas. So the next one we're going on to is Lochburn Park. So it's a small local park with trees around the edges, and there's no large green space nearby. So year one, what we would do is propose to stop cutting around trees and stop spraying on the edges. Year two, we would then only cut the path edges. So that would be quite a significant difference, and we could potentially be impacting play, informal play for local children, but that's something that we would really need to get feedback on. So the next slide is just showing you that location there. So it is fairly rural. So from a sort of climate change and biodiversity point of view, it might be quite good for, linking in with the trees, creating a nature network. But again, it's balancing, the usage and the biodiversity benefits there, because it certainly looks like we could be linking into other spaces. Okay, so the next one is Knesswood Play Area. So this is the main open space in the village, and I think it's rather well used by the locals. And so year one, we would cut the area with a ride-on machine, would leave quite a large margin and cut along the path edges. So it's leaving quite a bit of open space there. Year two, we would need to cease cutting except the play area and the path edges. So it would be around the play area to allow for play, but the open space, we would lose some of that there. The next one is just showing some photographs of that space. So the first one is the section that we would be stopped cutting in year 2. And then you can see the play area there as well, just to give a wee bit of an idea what it looks like there. Okay, so the next example is Green Park. So this is a neighbourhood play area and it's got local amenity green spaces. The play area is quite large, so there's quite a bit there that could be taken to no mow without affecting the play. And we would then mow path edges and no edge spraying. Year 2 we'd be looking at stop and cutting everything except the play area and junctions to make sure that people could see out safely. And then there's just some examples in the next slide of the housing estate and the play area. So that's all the examples. So just to talk a wee bit about the current initiatives and what we're doing now. So we've been very fortunate at getting nature restoration funding for 2 cut and lift machines. So these will cut and lift, but they will also cut and mulch. So it would allow us to work over the next year or 2 and just see if we could come up with a frequency of cutting these areas that we're basically stopping cutting. So what we don't want is scrub to invade. So we would then be able to determine with the capacity of the staff whether we could do that, some areas once a year, some areas every 3 years, some every 5 years, just to make sure that, you know, they don't turn into woodland and that we are actively managing them for biodiversity. Maybe not the ideal way, but it's certainly got its benefits, which has been shown in the monitoring that's been undertaken previously. We've identified sites that have got events or community participation. I know the Bloom committees and Path committees are all very active, so what we don't want to do is stop cutting sites that they're already maintaining. You know, an example of that would be, well, Milnathorpe War Memorial. Sorry, I was getting that a bit jumbled up there. So they're doing a lot there, and we've changed that over along with other areas to sustainable planting. So we've saved a significant amount of time by engaging with volunteers, stopping planting bedding in many locations, and the likes of war memorials, we were doing that twice a year. So that is where we've targeted as the war memorials, and they've now got sustainable native pollinators, which are environmentally friendly and have had the benefit of reducing the maintenance impact to the grounds maintenance service while engaging with communities. So we want to make sure that we're working in a positive way going forward. Yeah, so just on to the next slide. What we're hoping to do is continue modelling the whole of Perth and Kinross, monitor the existing trial sites for biodiversity and the effect of changes, because really we need to be looking at these over a 5-year period, just to see how it happens, how that progresses. And I think it's great because we've already got 2 years worth of data on some of these sites, so we're well on the way on it, and we can continue to do that going forward. We're going to review our consultation and communication methods to develop a plan for next year. And we'll be going to report to the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee ahead of the new grass cutting season, hopefully with more of these maps that we're proposing to take forward. But we're very much here today to take your views, see how you as a community feel about these things, what we can do, how we can work together. So on the next slide, it's, you know, how can you help us? How can we get the message out through local channels working together? What would be effective? You know, we've got very few staff, you know, to actually work with communities, but obviously we want to try and do that as much as we can. What would be the role of the community groups and community councils? Do we work with them on a ward basis? We need to think about signage as well, you know, because we're talking about 1,600 sites. It's obviously great to get as much signage and information out to people, but do we want to actually put out 1,600 signs potentially, or even more for some of our larger sites? Thinking about, you know, that some of it's plastic, some of it's paper, and would that be sustainable either environmentally or financially? And we would have limited opportunities to work with communities, but obviously we would really like to engage with the existing groups and try and work with proposals. But you know, how can we try and do that in a efficient way? So we'd be really open to suggestions on this. And how would we react if groups want to cut the areas themselves? Because, you know, this isn't all about savings. This is about biodiversity, enhancing it, and, you know, reducing emissions. So it's just, we need to have a wee think about that, what we would like to do. So that's basically the presentation. And if you've got any questions for me, I will do my best.
Any questions?
Well, I was going to just make a statement.
Yeah.
I think the first most important thing is you need to engage with all the bloom groups, because I mean, we've got Kinross-shire, what are we, the new village of the year. So if you engage with the bloom groups, a lot of this won't need to happen. In Crook of Devon, for example, the bloom group there are already applying to become a biodiversity village. So we're going down that route. I don't know how many of the other villages even know about that.
There's quite a few. Quite a few.
And the other thing I think you need to, right from the start of this, you need to make it clear to people that one of the things that the community needs to know, that biodiversity or otherwise, that this is not going to have any impact on road and path safety, because that's one of the biggest issues for people, is that it's great that we've got the verges being rewilded, but that's not much good if the roads aren't safe, the footpaths aren't safe, no clearing of leaves. Does that mean that the paths right now are not going to get cleared of leaves? So they then become dangerous. So it's that balance. Is we need the biodiversity, but it's getting across to people that road and path safety will be maintained.
Just in relation to the other areas, there's 12 biodiversity villages either already or in the process of happening next year or this year. There's 7 biodiversity towns within Perth and Kinross, and there's 3 biodiversity neighbourhoods. Catherine Lloyd-Jones leads a lot on it and does a huge amount of work in creating these areas, and they do a huge amount of benefit from a nature biodiversity perspective.
Can I ask
Leslie Ann pick up on any other?
Can I ask a question? Has any consideration been given to any ongoing monitoring of problems caused with additional ticks that are likely to be occurring? There's been a lot of publicity in some parts of not just this country but abroad, but the no-mow has led to significant increases in Lyme disease. I'm concerned particularly where no-mow areas might be close to areas where children play. Adults can be reasonably expected to wear long trousers and check for ticks, but children are much more vulnerable. I would think it would not do what you're trying to do biodiversity any good if we ended up with a significant increase in tick bites and possibly Lyme disease in children.
Okay, we can certainly take that on board, but the information that I've been given so far is it's only generally where there's deer or sheep around that there tends to be an increase. So it could be looked at, but we would probably need feedback from locals. Again, you know, we're talking about 1,600 sites, and we need to implement this on a geographical basis with general principles rather than getting into detailed mapping. But if there is somewhere that's known to have a high tick population, you know, that would be great to know that in advance.
Well, apparently we've had reports of increased number of tick bites in Kirkgate Park, and I'm not aware of any sheep, but deer can wander very widely at night, so one doesn't know where this might happen.
Okay.
Willie?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. And I have to tell you, I think this is going to be a really hard sell. Because people actually get really cross if they think their areas are becoming untended and unlooked after. Even if you explain to them it's all about increasing biodiversity. For example, Kirkgate Cemetery is a really important historical cemetery for Kinross, and it gets loads and loads of visitors to look at the gravestones. And if it becomes a jungle, I can see that being a problem. Not cutting verges often means that the vegetation actually encroaches on the paths, and the paths get narrower and narrower over time. A lot of the areas you've mentioned down in Kinross, where housing areas, if you go to a no-mow thing in front of people's windows, it gets to the stage that they've just got a jungle in front of their windows, which I can't see many people been unhappy about. And also an example of Donaldson Park in Mullathorpe, where we've got a large area of no-mow. It's just that it becomes a no-go area for anybody because it's all full of dog waste. So, I mean, we have, I think it's going to be a really hard sell. And I just don't know how, I mean, I can see everybody around the table is really enthusiastic about it. But I personally think it's going to be difficult to convince people this is a good way forward.
It's more just comments. I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with Willie. I think it'll be a very hard sell, and I would advise you not to waste any much more time on it. They introduced this in Orkney several years ago, and all that happened was the place looked derelict. It didn't look as if it was a biodiverse area or whatever. It just looked derelict. And there's a huge cruise ship business in Orkney, and the feedback was very poor amenity in this town, whatever. So needless to say, within a couple of years it was all reversed. The people who had taken over cutting it on their own, whether the council were allowing it or not, were able to stop because the council did start bringing things back to right. I think it'll be very unpopular. I would far rather pay 10% more council tax and have an amenity in a town and a village which was well kept, rather than just left to go to wreck and ruin. So I think it's a very hard sell.
Fran?
I completely agree. I'm all for increasing biodiversity. I question whether just not mowing something increases the biodiversity. You have grass cover there anyway. You're not doing native planting. You're not doing anything that is actually actively encouraging that. So my concern is that you are leaving areas, as has been pointed out, unkept, and it's going to encourage potentially more antisocial behaviour. I think it's more of a risk. I'm all for encouraging biodiversity, but I'm not 100%. I'm not convinced that this is the way to do it.
I've maybe not covered it well enough, but we do have some money to support communities that want to enhance the biodiversity. So we've been growing our own pollinators at the West Bank Nursery. We've also been growing on trees that will be ready in a few years. We have a budget for tree planting, and we are more than happy to work with communities to promote these areas, you know, specifically the tree planting. You know, it means that the grass won't grow as long. You know, we can put in fruit trees, you know, and then it's a food source available for communities as well. But we do have limited capacity to work with that, but certainly it's something that we're very, very keen to do. But with the scale of the savings, you know, this is what it's to look like, and it's just really my job to show you the picture of what things are like. By taking those savings on board and going by those principles.
There are different options, and there are ones where, I mean the plug plan stuff's a perfect example that where if you want to do it and you've got, you know, communities that want to get involved, they'll get the plug plans, put them in, adds great colour to the area. And then there's also the option, I think, on the cut and lift, which is beneficial for communities to get to use some of our machinery. We actually do cut and lift within communities, and we as a council, you know, we've got use this nature restoration fund to get some good cut and lift machinery, but it will cover all the areas.
Sure.
So communities have got this ability to get involved, and a lot of communities do get involved in this stuff hugely.
Absolutely.
I think what we're looking for is strategic biodiversity and not biodiversity by neglect. And that by leaving these areas by just ignoring them.
Yeah, I think
neglect.
that's probably a little bit unfair, to be honest. No, we're not just going to stop mowing and looking after areas. It's going to be
I'm looking at the year 2 of some of these. That's exactly what you're doing.
I think the thing is, for me, it's how far we go with this.
Yeah.
If we go too far, there will be everyone will be in uproar, and undoubtedly there'll be pressure on us to reverse it. So for me, it's about looking at the right sites and doing it in the right way and not going too far. And the area that we were working with last year, we did make some adjustments and changes, and the areas a lot better than anybody else. So maybe it's about knowing what to do in what areas and how far we go in individual sites. But I think very eloquently put, it will be a hard sell. It really will. But again, we started off when Leslie was starting the presentation. Everyone agrees with the principle of biodiversity and climate change. It's the right thing. But then when it starts to get a little bit closer to home, and I completely understand. So we've just got to try to work with you guys as much as we can to get it right as close as we can. And if we can't, then we'll just have to see where we go. But there are legitimate concerns, the tick things. I think that the dog fowl issue always winds me up, because that's the issue for people who are irresponsible dog owners, isn't it? Not for the way we manage the parks. And
just on some of the trials as well that we've been running, they've been cutting around the edges so people see that it's done on purpose and cutting paths through.
That's probably that's strategic.
That's a strategic, and I think this is Mark says we've got to get the balance right with that.
You think we've neglected something, we've failed, haven't we? That's what the look that it ends up. We will have failed. So we've got to.
Fran, did you want to come back on the same question?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Leslie Ann, for clarifying about the native pollinators. Have you also considered speaking to the Royal Botanic Gardens, specifically the Scottish Plant Recovery Project? Because they are trying to save the top 10 most at-risk plants in Scotland. They undoubtedly have a list of other plants that would also be potentially suitable. Some of the plants, for example, are crab apples. I can't remember. There's a list of 10. You can look up the blog on the Royal Botanic Gardens, and they're incredibly helpful. They obviously have a much longer list than 10, but it may well be that they can also advise on plants that would be beneficial, and then that also gives you a positive story in terms of these are at-risk plants and we're providing them into neighbourhoods so it becomes a better sell.
I'd really appreciate that. I'll let the girls at the nursery have a wee look into that. They have been looking, very closely at what they do. They've been collecting seeds locally, but certainly if there's at-risk plants, I do know we are planting some crab apples this year.
Right.
But yeah, we'll have a look at that and see how we can link up with that, because that would be a good news story that we could put out.
Dave. Yeah, I was just going to say that I've actually adopted this policy from my back garden. Half of it is unmown, and I've put a path through it. And I've been astonished how many butterflies and bees and things that have suddenly appeared out of nowhere, where before there was nothing. So I feel like I'm doing a mini project, but I'm doing a big lift them, leaving it to go wide. So, so just I mentioned.
That's what I mean. People can see that's a strategic thing, but when you just have a whole area that's been totally not touched, that's the bit you're going to get problems with.
If you cut past through it.
Yeah, as long as you cut past through it, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dave.
Yeah, it's untidy, unfortunately. Associated species, sure, and get into I mean, I think people just need to appreciate it and see it, and I would rather go to the maximum reduction in cutting the grass, and I may fully support what you're saying about cutting around the edge or cutting through the middle, so people do see that it has been managed. Otherwise, they just think it's been abandoned. That's the problem. But I think the more one does it, and the more people then realise, oh yeah, gosh, all those flowers, you know, dandelions are quite nice, go into flower sort of thing. No, and particularly also, I think, if you're going to do anything special, like talk to the schools, because the kids coming home will help reinforce the message. I think this point about rare plants and so on, it's an important point, but it's very easy to start sliding towards into a gardening situation. And we had this debate in Blind Grace. An even worse maintenance issue there. You know, it's so easy to put some plants in somewhere, and you know, someone's forgotten about it 3 months later and they're dead. So I would definitely, I mean, the other thing is herbicide and artificial fertilizer. You mustn't apply those to these areas, so you then do get maximum diversity coming up.
Yeah, we visited an area with Leslie Ann, and the amount of bees, the variety of bees and the quantity of bees was just through the roof. I mean, it just was, you know, and you know, nature, there was a state of nature report that came out with Nature Scott 2-3 months ago, and it was bleak reading. It was really bleak reading to see where we're going, and you know, the understanding over the pollinator side that if we don't have pollinators, we don't have fruits.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a bit there. So and it is getting the balance. It is absolutely getting the balance right. And they're good projects. I know Milnathorpe Primary School have just got. They're going to do quite a lot of nature stuff, and they got quite a large sum of nature restoration fund. You know, and the tree plant and Countryside Trust have got a tree for every kid in the area. And they're working locally here in Perth and Kinross-shire now as well with kids with schools, so they can go on. And it can kind of be a benefit for the kids as well to understand the importance of all and educational as well. Neil?
Just very quickly, thank you. I fully understand the rationale of what Leslie Ann kindly explained. Just a couple of things that I agree on. Is there a timescale when you're looking at bringing this in to be there? And secondly, you've spoken a lot about not cutting, allowing it to, but you also spoke about leaf blowing. Now, we have a problem with drains getting blocked and a lot of water, which is a huge concern in the villages around about here. If we don't do something about that, it's going to create another problem. We can't just say, right, we're not going to collect leaves, because it's got to block up the drains, block up the gullies. Where's the water got to go? It's got to knock onto the flood defences that we're trying to stop. So I think there's a bigger picture there. And I think everybody agrees that it's going to be a difficult sell to the community without being specific, saying, well, this is what's going to happen in this particular area. We'd have to explain that at our community meetings to say, this is what could potentially happen. Sorry, there's a couple of points here, Leslie, sorry.
That's okay. Unfortunately, Paul, who does the operational stuff, you know, he manages the actual staff on the ground. I'm going to try and answer this as best as I can from what he's explained to me, but we wouldn't be collecting leaves in the areas that are uncut. So it would still be blown off paths, but we wouldn't be taking them away. We'd be trying to blow them into those areas. But it's a kind of, let's see what happens. But it wouldn't be that we would want to leave paths unusable or unsafe or to block drains. But I can't guarantee that there wouldn't in some locations be a drain in a long grass area. I don't know the ground that well enough, but it's certainly something that we have taken into consideration. And it would be, if we're stopping cutting all that grass, we're not going to go and take the leaves away in the long grass areas, but we would still try to have people having safe usage.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, there could be unintended consequences to this. I think, you know, those points earlier about the safety, road safety and path safety, and that I think we just need to make sure anything that we do doesn't have those unintended. We don't want to start, you know, the gullies backing up and causing service water issues, so we'll just need to keep an eye on that and make sure there's not those unintended consequences, which, you know, we're trying to solve a problem and we'll create a problem. So I guess that'll just be all part of sort of the implementation, I think. But that's certainly not our intention to create a problem onto the or you know, piles of leaves onto the highway and that way.
I think it'd be safe to say that actually most of the community councils around Kinross-shire are all in favour of biodiversity.
Absolutely.
I mean, things it's top of our agendas, most meetings and everything we deal with in planning. Biodiversity comes up every single time. So it will be a hard sell, but I think we have the resources in our own community councils to be able to get the message across. So the more information we can have from yourselves as the officers that we can put through that will allay these fears, because I can imagine, I can almost hear the comments coming up from community council meetings on this. If we've got the information that we can give back as answers, it will make everyone's life a lot easier. So if we've got pre-information rather than suddenly finding we get a complaint from someone saying, oh, the grass hasn't been cut or the paths haven't been cleared or whatever it happens to be, if we can preempt that with information like this or need as to where it's going.
Can I ask just a question just regarding the signage? Now we, in Kinross we've had this down at Kirkgate by Nature Scott, where we've had an area for quite a long time that's been quite well developed and is a great example of it. And one of the things I always notice is the signs going around it are clear and give a clear example. What it's going to be. How important do you think within the areas where it's happening that you do have clear signage that?
I think you don't need 16,000 hopefully, but no. I was thinking is we've got it at Penny's Wood and the community orchard at Crook of Devon behind the church, and the signage has gone up as a result of the funding they've got. So the signs have gone up themselves, but that's been quite useful for people to be able to see as to what's been growing, what the butterflies are, and the signage has been done with the children as well, which is so it's quite interactive. But I do think you need some signage, but just not too much.
Yeah, I think as long as it's relevant as well, and not telling people not to swim in Wallace Park. If we still have that sign, which is crazy, but
the sharks have moved.
The sharks swimming around.
Okay.
Please.
I was just going to ask, is it possible to get the maps out to people?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that would be helpful. You know, we can't do this on a site-by-site basis, but we could probably do it on a community council level. So if we can try to get, when we've got them, Leslie, the proposals for the sites within each community council and send them to the community council and try to do it at that level, that may be more manageable for us.
Well, initially we were just going to do for each ward, but if someone wants to tell me specifically what they would like, and I can arrange for them to be sent. I take it this is just a blank map rather than proposals, or?
No, I think when you've worked off the sites, you know, like the examples you'd give today.
Yeah, we don't have the capacity to do all that before April. We were just giving the principles out as a toolbox to operations. But if there's some specific sites, I can try my best.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take it away and we'll see what we can do without giving the commitment exactly. But the principle is for me about trying to engage with the committee and the community councils and not committing to engage with each individual group or community or neighbourhood or individual, because we simply can't do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be good if you can even just summarise what your thinking is, because forewarned is forearmed, and if you're going to get a huge reaction, it's better to know before you do it rather than after. So if you can just give an idea, an indication, because some places really benefit from it. I know the park you picked out back of Greenwood, which is it's a mire basically.
Right.
Although it's just that's ideal for this sort of thing. But other places might not be. So I think if you can just get a list even.
Okay. Brilliant.
If that's everything, Leslie, thanks very much for coming up and present and giving everyone a good idea of what the challenges and expectations are. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
We're moving on, so I'm to ask Mr. Smart, Chairman of Glenfarclane, to deliver a presentation.
I don't have a presentation, but I'll let you know what's been happening with us in the past couple of years. A story which is familiar to everybody living in rural communities, that public transport over the years has withered on the vine. To the extent that we lost our bus service 2 years ago, it was replaced by Ernside coaches who stepped in and provided a stopgap of services which kept us going. We were set up to look at some of the gaps that were in that service and provide community transport for the village, which was quite fortuitous because about last year at this time, Ernside announced that they were retiring, and again, for the second time, we would be without a bus service. It put us in a good position because we were already working up some proposals, but we just took it one stage further, and on the 1st of April this year, we started our own bus service. And community transport in Glenfarg, and we basically are not just about the bus. We have 5 different divisions. We've got the bus service, the 55, we've got our community buses, which we operate a social and sports and events type thing, taking people to shops and whatever. We have a school bus which we run, and we also are looking at wheeling, cycling and whatever, and walking. So we've got 5 broad areas that we're looking at. But for tonight, I'll dwell mainly on the 55 bus service. 55 at the moment runs between Glenfarg and Kinross. We have been running an hourly service. Initially, it was between 8 and 6. We introduced an earlier service from 7 o'clock in the morning so that people could connect with the commuter buses at the park and ride and get to Edinburgh before 9 o'clock. So we now operate between 7 o'clock and 6 o'clock. We took in a couple of extra wee detours to get side of Strathmiglo in the morning to pick up school kids for the high school who weren't entitled to school transport because they were out of area. And that's worked quite well. When Ernside gave up, they were carrying roughly about 120 passenger journeys. They were doing 120 passenger journeys a week. We're now doing roughly around 400. A wee bit less in the school holidays, but during school term time, we're hitting on 400, and it's increasing steadily. It's by word of mouth, social media and whatever. So people are beginning to use the bus again, and they're beginning to enjoy using the bus. We're now looking at, in January, we will be operating a pilot service between Kinross and Perth via Glenfarg. So rather than doing a Glenfarg to Kinross and a Glenfarg to Perth, we're looking at joining that up and operating an alternative to the motorway route, slightly scenic route. It'll take 5 minutes longer coming our way than going down the other way. We operate what's called a wiggly route or a flexi route, so that we deviate off the fixed route. We'll work to Duncreevy or Drunny to pick up passengers. We'll drop people off round at Calder's Garden Centre, or we'll do the wee loop round Bridge End on request. And the same with the route up to Perth. We'll operate into Kintillo if there's a demand. And once we get to Perth, we'll not just stop at Canal Street. We'll offer the railway station, bus station, leisure pool, hospital, and retail parks. So there'll be a range of flexible destinations within Perth. We'll be supporting this with a digitally enhanced demand responsive transport app. So you'll be able to book your bus online, much as you would do with the Ember bus, and you'll be able to pay for it online, be able to track the bus on your app and whatever. So moving it a wee bit into the 21st century. So that'll be starting about mid-January, February when we start the Perth pilot. So I think what we're trying to say is that community transport has proven to be a good news story for Glenfarg and also for Milnathorpe and Kinross, because a lot of our business actually just that we drag up and down. People like that bus service, they jump on and they jump off. It's inexpensive for those that still have to pay. It's 50 pence. If you book 10 tickets, it's 50 pence. If you buy a 10 ticket, I think it's 50 pence within the village, £1 for the Glenfarg link. So it's an inexpensive service. We appreciate that what we've done is actually quite good for us, but we actually think it's a good example for the whole of Kinross-shire, and that there are possibilities of developing into the other communities, and that other communities don't necessarily have to set up the entire system that we've got, but we would be happy to assist other people to become community transport led solutions for some of the other issues within Kinross-shire. We're actively looking at doing something with the 202, which has proven problematical since it was taken over by Stagecoach, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to do something there whereby we have a community who provide some support for us to provide a bus service there to make it work in the same way, hopefully get the same improvement in passenger numbers, and there's the potential for the other areas in Kinross-shire in due course as well. I think there's some discussion about getting the Kinross-shire Transport Group activated again so that we can have meetings to look at that. And just as we discussed with paths, have a 5-year or a 10-year strategic view as to how we would like transport to be working. I think we have big issues in that a lot of the stuff we can't solve, and we need people like TACTRANS and Perth Cross Council and Scottish Government to actually sort a lot of the issues out. We arrive into the park and ride to see the 202 1 minute departing before us, so we don't connect with them. We connected initially with the CityLink buses. They then changed their timetables by a whole half an hour, so we don't connect with them anymore. We can't get a ticket in Glenfarg that takes you all the way through. There are loads of things that should be able to be happening now, and there's the new Transport Act of 2019, which has been enacted this year, which should be able to actually direct and solve a lot of these problems. So it's really just to put us on the radar and say that there are ways that we can actually do things differently. I've been actually sitting here watching the buses going up and down. It's actually been quite entertaining seeing the different buses. We this week took delivery of our first brand new 16-seater low floor disabled access bus with purpose-built destination boards, electric doors that work. It was a wee bit embarrassing when we went to the Community Transport Association conference and presented that the chap in front of us was the bus users guy, and he presented pictures of buses and how they shouldn't be, and they were our buses held together with blue tack and sticky tape. So I think that the day after that meeting we came out and ordered our first new bus, which is absolutely wonderful. So anyway, that's basically what we've got to say about community transport in Glenfarg and Kinross-shire, and we hope to be able to do a lot more in the coming years.
I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
The uplift in those passengers are taking.
We'd have to say it's an absolute wonderful thing to be doing, because we've got 3 employed drivers, 15 volunteer drivers, a waiting list of several waiting to go through training to volunteer. It's actually growing and people love it. People fight for shifts and trips and stuff like that when they come out. So it's to be commended. It really does a lot for the community to actually it's that rather than having this downward vicious cycle of things stopping working, it's a virtuous cycle that you begin to get people to the shops, so shops start to get busier again, and because the shops are getting busier again, the buses get busier, and the theatres, you can get people to the theatre, so they begin to work again. So it's all about multiplying and whatever.
Okay, question.
That's my case.
I think.
Just a question on, I'm not sure if it's a right observation I've got, but just ask your opinion on it. Given it's, the community feel it's, they own it as such because it's community bus. Do you think that increases the usage of it? That people feel that, and it's not just a use it or lose it type thing, but they actually think because it belongs to Glenfarg, we need to use it because it's an ownership.
Absolutely. I've got my democratic duty. We have to go and use the bus 3 times this week or whatever, and I think there's a lot of that goes on. But there's also an element of it's there, people are using it. It's the social element of it. It's actually quite good being on the bus sometimes. Some of the chat and whatever. So it's a mental well-being thing. I say that we've got 400 passenger journeys a week, but behind each one of those journeys is a story of people to tell about. And people come on the bus and say, "This has transformed my life. I can get out. I can get about. And I can get down there. I can get back." The drivers are not just bus drivers, they're ambassadors, social workers, friends, entertainers. It's all of that sort of thing. So it's a lot more than just a bus service. It's a community service, and at the moment it's working well.
Just again, I think you said just within Kinross-shire, people are watching and looking at the benefits. Within Perth and Kinross and wider, I feel it's a fantastic example of what a community can do.
We have attracted quite a bit of attention, and we do have a few communities coming to see what we've done, and they're looking to emulate it. So it's been good, and I think we're going to be, on the BBC again in the next couple of weeks. They're filming next week the service for Morning Live, which is the daytime programme. So it'll be on that, and I think they're filming next week. It'll probably be around Christmas time or whatever it's out.
Be back on TV again.
Yeah. Yeah, so the film's not scheduled to start until next May.
That's good. I'd love to see you taking on the tour too.
Yeah, we'd like to get involved. There's another 56 running down there.
Okay, has anyone else got any questions? Well,
yeah, I think everybody's absolutely amazed at what the Glenfarr community have done. But what do you see as problems on the horizon? Do you see things that you're in the near future? Or
I think the big problem on the horizon is always funding. You know, what's going to happen with the big budgets next year? What are the discussions going to be in? It's a sort of sword of Damocles funding that we have, that we know we've got funding until March. What's coming after that? And I think that's why I'm saying there's this new government, the new Act of 2019. There has to be some way of making these services a lot more sustainable than relying, and the council are looking for different ways of saving money all the time, and that's the biggest worry for us, because these bus services will never be, well, they might be in 10 years' time if everybody got out of their cars and got onto the bus. They might be commercially viable, but at the moment they certainly aren't, and we're relying on Perth and Kinross council funding and funding from various Scottish charities. Smarter Choices, Smarter Places have been a godsend to help us get started up. Stuff like they pay for us to brand the buses and whatever, which it makes a big difference to actually have a wee bit of a corporate feel to it and to look professional, to have a jersey with Glenfarr Community Transport and whatever, to have a wee uniform sort of stuff. So that's the biggest worry, is funding long term. I don't really worry about volunteer fatigue or whatever, because there are younger people coming along who are quite interested. A lot of what we have is people who are recently retired, and it's actually giving them a new lease of life with stuff to do. And I think that will keep coming through, that we will have people who are retiring and looking to come in.
Can I just ask one more question? Is there going to be a report done on the impact that your service has provided? Because a lot of things you do, you're helping to counteract like social isolation and all the sort of things that you're actually doing.
Yeah.
It'd be quite good if somebody did a report on the actual.
We will have, because we've got funding from Smarter Choices, Smarter Places, we have to have an out. When we complete the first year project, we have to be able to produce exactly that sort of report. So what we've been doing is keeping a wee log of people's stories to say it. And I think the biggest thing is not how much it costs to run the community transport service, it's the cost of not running it. You know, the knock-on of not being able to get doctor's appointments, not being able to get to your work, everybody having to buy a third car rather than 2 cars and whatever. And it's that knock-on. They tried to stop community transport funding in Northern Ireland because of the particular problems they've got there with the government. And there was going to be no community transport, it was all going to be withdrawn. And they suddenly realised when they started it that they realised what the costs were going to be of withdrawing community transport in Northern Ireland. And it had to be withdrawn very quickly and reintroduced. So it's that sort of thing, and it's to try and keep plugging away at the message. It's actually this multiplier. It's much better for the community, it's much better for Perth, it's much better for Kinross and whatever, to be doing this rather than not doing it and allowing just public transport to wither on the vine. We all know that we have to get out of our cars and start using public transport, but you can't do that if you don't have the public transport. The biggest benefit for us has been the young people's bus pass, because they are now using the bus regularly. They've got into the habit, they love it. And to be honest with you, our young people are very polite, embarrassingly kind. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So it's a good bunch. So.
Okay, so if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, that is one. What is it?
We get for the 55 and the school run, we get £84,000, which is less than we did before. So there's been a considerable saving for that. We get £100,000 from Smarter Choices, Smarter Places. So it's a fairly big ticket. But our costs are mainly staff. It costs a lot to employ drivers. And the rental of the buses. The buses is a lot, and fuel costs a fortune. So all that money disappears fairly quickly.
I'm conscious of time. Do you mind if we move on?
Sure.
Everyone happy? Any other questions? Okay, moving on to the Blurrington Primary School. Lee, would you like to give us an update on where things are at with that?
Yeah, happy to do so. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. I've got some notes to refer to. I did have a couple of slides, but given the technical issues, I'll probably avoid that because everything seems to be working okay just now. So two main things to cover. First, just a bit of background for those that aren't familiar with the project and where it is just now, and current situation, which includes an update that I got just earlier today from Development Trust. So worth reminding us that interest in the old school and schoolhouse goes back some years, certainly pre-COVID. The Community Development Trust, the Fossway Community Development Trust, was set up in mid-2022 as the vehicle through which the assets could be taken into community management or community ownership. Initially, they were seeking a lease. Now I understand that their preference is for full ownership. They submitted an expression of interest in the two buildings on the 28th of July last year. And following some conversations and sharing of information, we encouraged them to move towards the full community asset transfer request with support where required. The group were initially aiming to submit a community asset transfer request and business plan in June of this year, but as with all projects of this nature, other things come into scope, and it's taken a little bit longer. We did receive a draft of a community asset transfer request within that timescale, and we're able to provide some feedback, but we haven't received the full asset transfer request and business plan as yet. It's worth saying that the Development Trust is now a registered SCIO, Scottish Charitable Incorporated Organisation, so it is now an eligible body in terms of the legal requirements for community asset transfer. The Development Trust have been working with colleagues in the external funding team to look at a broader community action plan with support from that staff member. And at this time, I believe they've really got three options to consider, and the ball's very much in their court. So those options are to continue with the community asset transfer and the broader community action plan work concurrently, or pause the community asset transfer work until the community action plan process is completed, or thirdly, to complete the community asset transfer first and then go back to the community action plan at a later date. Now, the update that I received earlier today suggests that they would like to work on both areas of activity concurrently. They're currently seeking membership of the Development Trust Association Scotland, which is an umbrella membership organisation that can provide some specific advice and support to development trusts across the country. And through them, we'll be looking to secure some consultancy support to complete a community asset transfer request and business plan, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting when we were talking about the discretionary funds that are available to the committee, with an indicative timescale now of looking to submit a community asset transfer request and business plan by April of 2024.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? You want to say something, Sarah?
No, actually, because Lee has got the same information I got this morning, so from Nicola. So, and that was the last night's meeting. I just wanted to stress, I think Lee was noticed that it's the lack of the valuation that is holding up being able to get the feasibility plan put together. So we really do need the valuation.
Yep, understand. So the initial valuation request was for a lease, and I believe that's been received. Now that the Development Trust is keener on the idea of full ownership, my understanding is that colleagues in estates are looking to instruct the district valuer or an alternative private sector body to provide that that full valuation for full ownership.
I don't think we've received any. They've received any valuation at all.
No, they haven't. What he's saying is that their estates are instructing someone to produce it.
Well, I don't think they've received one even for the lease option.
I believe that they have. I would need to double check with Ashley Peace and Estates, but my understanding was that that was received a week or so ago, and he's now considering the best option to try and get a valuation for full ownership for purchase. Now, if we go down the district valuer route, it might take longer. So I believe he was going to be discussing this with the Development Trust directly as to whether or not they would be happy to accept a valuation from an alternative private sector estate agent.
I think it's fine whichever way it goes. It's they're keen. They're very keen to get to the next stage. It's just taken a little while to get through the legal stages. But it will be run in conjunction, so the community asset transfer and the community action plan will be run as concurrent operations with the Development Trust.
That's good. Everyone happy with that? Thank you, Lee, for that. Shall we move on to the Kinross-shire Community Investment Fund?
Neil had a question.
Oh, does Neil have a question? Oh, yes. The queue come up.
I do.
Neil.
Thanks. Thanks for being on. Apologies for my late arrival. I've been rather unwell this week. I think, Lee, sorry, it was just a question. I think it's probably answered actually in Sarah's question, and that was as regards to the condition of the building, because I know when we visited it, there was some optimism about what could be done with it, and obviously the condition, particularly the residential part. Has that been assessed, or will that be done as part of the valuation? I know valuation and survey are two different things, but interlinked. Will the condition of the building, is that known, or will that be done as part of the valuation?
The honest answer is I don't know. I'm certainly not technically minded in that way, and it's not my area of expertise at all. But certainly, the most up-to-date building survey would have been provided at some point. Now that might be some years out of date and may require revision. Sarah might know more actually, giving her involvement from the community end, but that's certainly something I can check and come back with.
Right, thank you.
I was saying it is in a very bad state. I know we've been very lucky. Finally, we've got a key safe been put in with a key, so that the community can actually access to do some minor maintenance. The roof is leaking, and when the roofers came out to fix the roof, they missed the hole that was there, so the roof is still leaking. The building is very rapidly deteriorating. So yes, that's why we do need the survey and the valuation done, because at the moment it's fast going down the route of Ivy Cottage.
Okay. So something that needs to be done fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
I've made a note to check with Ryan Graham and our property maintenance team to get the most up-to-date building condition survey, or to ask what the timescale is for getting that updated if that's required. And I'll double check with Ashley Peace as to what the timescale is for getting the valuation for full ownership, and I can report back through Kirsten if that's okay.
That would be fantastic, Lee. Thank you.
And is it possible to keep the building reasonably wind and watertight in the interim period? Is that being done?
Again, I would need to check with colleagues in property. I don't know what the requirement is there, or what the maintenance position is.
Okay, if you could do that as well, that'd be wonderful. We all happy? Move on.
Yep, thank you.
Kinross-shire Investment Fund, Community Investment Fund. Do you want to give us a brief?
Yeah, certainly. So there was a paper provided as item 10 in the agenda, in the pack. So the purpose of that report is to ask committee effectively to homologate the funding decisions that were made by the ward panel for Kinross-shire in September. It also sets out the process for a further round of SIF funding, and asks the committee to agree to organise and hold a second ward panel for Kinross-shire early in 2024 to consider those applications and decide how to allocate the remaining £8,000. The report itself, at section 4, provides some background on SIF and the process used this year. Section 5 summarises the funding decisions that were taken by the panel and, as I said, asks committee to formally homologate them. And section 5.3 and 5.4 set out the timescale for this further round of funding, with applications open until Friday the 15th of December. And we'll seek to provide a further report for committee at the first meeting of 2024, letting committee know how that remaining £8,000 was allocated, and again seeking their approval to homologate those decisions.
Okay, any questions? Are we all happy with the reopening it and having another board panel? Yes. Good. Did you want to mention the request from Broke Not Broken for the?
If I can, thank you. Yes, so back in 2019-20, there was a SIF application in Kinross-shire, a joint application from MECOP, who are a national charity, and Broke Not Broken, who you'll be familiar with as a more local organisation, and they were awarded £5,000 effectively to support community-led activities and some programmes to support members of the traveller community. Now they've spent approximately 50% of that funding. I'm still waiting on confirmation of the exact figures. And obviously that was awarded now 4 years ago, and most of that activity took place immediately before and immediately after lockdown. So the remaining funds are still sitting in Broke Not Broken's bank account, and they're now seeking to amend the project to use the remaining funds in a different way. And their proposal would be to use the remaining funds, which would be approximately £2,500, to offer energy grants of up to £500 to travelling families in Kinross-shire, with the idea that that would lift them out of poverty in such a way that they wouldn't need to rely on Broke Not Broken for some of the other services that they currently access. So normally what we would do in these circumstances is to go back to the ward panel and ask if they are content that we allow Broke Not Broken to use the remaining funds in this way. But obviously, given that was 4 years ago and the situation with decision making is now slightly different, I thought it was best to bring that to committee. I should also stress this request has only come in the last week or two, so it's all quite fresh.
Yes, I heard about it today. I mean, how do people feel about this?
This is just reallocating the money they've already got.
They've got the money already. Yeah. What they're saying is they can't use it for the original purpose, but they want to use it for another purpose, which is giving out these small grants. And it's just a matter of whether we want to do that. We could ask for it to come back to the ward panel, which will need to meet later on this year after closing of the SIF funding. But are people happy to go with it just now?
No. There's more people on the panel than are here. Can I suggest that we just do by email a response to all the panel members at the last meeting, because it's still the same SIF panels as such, maybe different people on it, but it's still the SIF panel, and just ask for a view there and just look for a simple majority to decide whether we go with the repurposing of the funds.
Up with that?
If we, I'm quite relaxed about it, but if we agree to this, will that mean that Broke Not Broken might need further funding going forward to sustain this as an income source for stretched?
Well, my understanding is they would have to reapply for additional funding. This is just a one-off fund, but maybe Lee can give us more answer.
Yes, that's correct. The funding would only go as far as the funding goes, if you follow. So yes, if they wanted to continue with a project like this, then they would need to find additional funds from another source. If I may comment on the ward panel situation, I can absolutely understand why you would want to go down that route. I suppose my concern would be, having tried to get decisions by email in the past, it can be a very, very long process. And ultimately the decision sits with committee. But if that's the process that you want to follow, then we will happily get that sent out to the panel members and ask for their support or otherwise.
We have done it by email before and just put a week deadline on it. Just say whoever replies within a week, and the majority will go at that specific point after a week if people are not responding to it.
The only thing I'd ask is this time dependently? Is it something that they want to do before Christmas?
Well, I would imagine, given that it's they've not specifically said that, but given that it is in relation to energy costs and we are approaching winter, I would imagine that an early decision would be appreciated.
Happy with still go with the email for that.
I just feel that, you know, it's the panel is kind of responsible for the decision, so the current panel should then.
I don't think you take away that
power.
power. I don't think you take away the power that you've given to the SIF group by making a decision.
Okay, that seems to be a consensus. So
and then we could agree that here that whatever that decision is, we just go with it straight away without having to come back here for.
We delegated the role to the yeah. So we're all happy with that. Yeah?
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
So we've agreed the paper. We've agreed that the funding will be homologated. We've agreed to have the fund reopened and have another ward panel. We've agreed that the email will go out about the money for Not Broken. So the final paper is the final item is Banking Hub. You've got 1 minute.
1 minute. Well, okay. It's you know, banking hubs are important. You know, we lost 4 banks in Kinross, 1 in Milnathorpe. At the time they came up for closure, and I think initially announced January in 2020. I know with Councillor Barnacle, I wrote a letter to them requesting a banking hub. But as I believe Willie wrote one as well to them requesting a banking hub as well. And really we should have it then, but there was no procedure set up. Following the opening of the banking hub in Carnoustie, and I believe a few days ago there was one opened in Brecon, put an application in quite a few while ago for a banking hub within Kinross. Initially it was turned down based on the population criteria. The population wasn't met, so they thought there was only 2,900 because they had to do 1 kilometre radius from the centre of Kinross outside Greens, which basically, because Kinross is very constrained because of the motorway and the lock and a golf course, and exceptionally narrow when you start to look at it. They only had 2,900 people, and then the number of businesses they said, so they had to have 40 businesses that accepted cash within 1 kilometre, and they came up with 29, which immediately I thought that's not right, just not even nearly right. So following that, we put a motion through council to and had had a few meetings with Link, you're responsible for setting the criteria. Following that, Link reassessed it based on some of the information and came up with the move to where the centre of Kinross was, and basically managed to get something that was 4,500, which hit the population criteria. And then I went down, walked around the whole week in Kinross within that initial 1 kilometre circle and came up with 62 businesses that accepted cash. So I had them all written down, what type of businesses were. Here you go. Subsequently then, they have since visited, so we got past the first criteria. They have now visited Kinross and had a look at it. And so we're on to the last stage, which is basically the final decision. And we have a meeting coming up with them. When I say we, there's an application, well, Creeford definitely getting one, but there's one for Auchterarder as well. Dunkeld was covered, and Aberfeldy kind of covered in the motion, but I'm not sure where the applications are with the ones not involved. But I know Auchterarder is a similar position with us. They've had a visit of the Link people, but we've got a meeting now coming up, which will hopefully give us a final decision on whether we're getting one or not. At that point, it goes to Cash Access UK, who will then decide on the premises. And one of the things in the motion was very much that council will help find the premises and stuff like that and assist in any way, and not financially, by the way, because I have a budget decision related to it, but help in any way to set up a banking hub in Kinross. Now I think that reasonably short. I don't think I've missed any, but happy with any questions on it all. Any questions?
I would say well done, Richard. Perhaps it's been a Nicholas Cock-a-hoop.
I think the only thing, if we do fail, the FCA, a wee bit more stubborn than that, unfortunately, but the FCA are due to do a review on the criteria with it, and if we do fail, then I will be chatting to every community council asking for support and lobbying the FCA to make sure, because there's no way to go for banks to not justify in a hub in the town. So we'll go to the FCA and we'll get as much support locally as we can to just.
But again, it's that attitude that rural communities don't deserve a bank. You know, we're in Glenfarg. We accept cash on the bus. We need somewhere to take the cash. We have to go to Perth. And
doing that anyway.
I should have.
Well, that'll be fine. Come January. At the moment, we don't have a bus there.
When I've done my list of all the businesses, I should have put occasionally on 2 or 3 places because it took me a couple of hours to do it. Should have went number 55 bus, number 55. Yeah, lots of cash.
I think it's completely discriminatory. I mean, it's discriminatory on.
I think what needs changed is 1 kilometre circuit, which we got told by Link does not work with Scotland, actually Scotland. It does not work for Wales and it does not work for Cornwall, where towns don't grow in a circular fashion, but they're forced to grow by the terrain that surrounds them. And they admitted there was problems with it. And I think there's a real need, if we get to that level, I still think there's a real need for other areas to have a look at the wider community, so the whole Kinross-shire and how and the benefits, not just for a 1 kilometre circle, but for Crooked, Devon, for Scotland Bell, Pall Mall, everything in Glenfarg, and just sort of see, obviously, to see, you know, what the benefits are for the whole area.
The population of Kinross-shire is 15,000.
That's right. It was adult population, by the way. I think it was adult population, but still 2,900. It was just, you know, I mean, even
got that Kinross and all.
Yeah, you know, 6,000 or something.
Bank accounts as well. It's important to get bank account.
Yeah.
Once
class.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on a banking hub, we'll have a bus.
Yeah.
It'd be a great place to raise the Scots living.
I think one of the best things, and I'm not taking this with, you know, I've done some of the initial work with Stuart Donaldson on our thing. I think one of the best things, it believes in our motion, it believes that for town centres to survive and thrive, access to banking services is essential. And I think that's a key element of it as well. It's about protecting our economy and our local communities and putting out banking hubs and important part of that.
Right, well done.
Well done.
7:05 and
Well done.
The officers need to get away to get a tea. Are we all happy?
Happy.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody online. See you later on.